Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Miscellaneous podcast with your host, the Mad Chatter Ryan MK. That's right. Now, I want to apologize for any issues we may encounter, whether it be technical or anything like that, because you see, along with my other podcast, The Dynasty Wonderland, which, if you're into fantasy football and whatnot, you can check that out. Everywhere you find this one, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Go to my Twitters and the Instagrams to find all my stuff at RMK Madness. Both accounts. Now, as I was saying, with both these podcasts, I was having issues with the memory, the storage on my old pad. So I upgraded to an iPad Air, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it works just about every way I need it to. Except for trying to record the pods, I can't hear through my headphones. So, recording the fantasy pod with my friend Aaron Stewart, who was on the pod last week. This one, discussing wrestling and stuff. Pro-graps, as the kids say these days. And he's actually going to make an appearance on this pod as well. We're doing a little Game of Thrones chatter. That's right. And there's a reason behind that. We'll get to that. But between that pod, this pod, the new equipment, it's not all coming together like it should. And the past few weeks have been trying, to say the least. But we're getting it to work. I'm having to use my old iPad for certain things and my wife's iPad for certain things. And I'm getting it all to come together, and it's working. But there's been a few audio issues, a few technical issues along the way. Some have shown through in the podcast. So if there's any of those tonight, I apologize. I'm working through everything, trying to get this down as crisp and tight and smooth and nice as it should be, really. Because this should be something that flows rather well. But I'm also not the most tech savvy, so you could see how, certain things might happen. And I might not be on the ball with this stuff and have everything sounding as it should always. Because as I do these changes and upgrades and whatnot, I'm still learning how to adapt with the tech, I guess, is the way to put it. But all that aside, little disclaimer for you. I'm glad you've joined. Again, don't forget to check my social media at RMK Madness, the Twitters, the Gram. And I hope you've been well. Hope all of you have been well. That's right. I've been not too bad here at the Madhouse MK. Pretty good. Spring break is over. And, when you're doing the online schooling, that means you got to go back to, a little bit of parenting. Not parenting. That's a full-time job. Sorry, teaching is what I meant to say. You got to go back to the teaching, partly part-time teacher, So that's but hey, we're approaching summer. We're getting there. It's spring. So only have to do this so much longer and then a nice little break. But we did enjoy the spring break, got out, went to the creek, had some fun, some picnics, some campouts downstairs. Or did the good old dad, with the little, I've talked about them before, the little stick and ball contraptions that you can make like, tents and forts and things with. And so we've had a blast. But this week it's been back to school. I got my marijuana badge, which is fantastic. Because you see, the whole work thing for me has been a bit of a struggle lately, a process. I've done some work, not nearly enough as I need to or want to. And I'm hesitant to go back to restaurants. In part because I fucking hate them. And I have a bachelor's degree in communications. I should have fucking went for history or something because I got a decent brain. And I know some shit. And pick the right degree, people. That's all I can say. Pick the right fucking degree. Gosh. So, being as, my wife and I have been growing the marijuana, which again, we're here in Colorado, perfectly fucking legal. We got our medical cards, thank you very much. So we're doing it all legally. And we grow. In the first batch, there were a couple of mistakes made. It turned out okay. But now we're on to the second batch. And we're feeling good. And now we both have medical badges. Marijuana badges, sorry. And now we can go work for dispensaries and whatnot. So that's the next step. Get out of the restaurant industry. Continue working in, whatever this would be called, podcast, entertainment, podcasting, and the fantasy football stuff I do. I do fantasy football writing and a podcast. So I've got lots of things moving. I also write novels. You know what? This isn't about me. But if you like my stuff, hang around, keep following me because I've got lots more coming. But now, to help better provide for my family, I can get into some work in the marijuana field, and that's great because I love marijuana. It's been very, 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 very beneficial. Very beneficial. No! And I know. It's not going to happen a lot. It's been very beneficial, I would say, for several reasons. Sleep is the biggest one. I fucking used to have the worst time trying to sleep. Just all the thoughts in my head, all this crazy shit, just Marijuana's helped with that. It's helped me eat more. It's done a lot, man. Because, I'm not the biggest dude. I got to work on trying to, not be too skinny, which I'm sure some people hear and they're like, oh, fuck you. But it's not, the other end of the spectrum isn't great either, okay? Healthy weight is good. So, yes, into the marijuana, find lots of benefits in that. I know a little bit about growing. The wife has done a lot of the work, but I've had to, learn with her and help her. So I got my hands in cultivation. But if they want to start me out bud tending, that's fine. I'll be drawn to everybody's t-shirt, just like they do to me. I have a great t-shirt collection. Every time I walk in to buy weed, I got someone say, that's a great sweatshirt. That's a great t-shirt. That's a great hat. I like that stuff too. Let's talk about that while I get you your weed. That's what people do to me. I can't wait to do that with other people. Hey, while I gather your marijuana, let's chat about Batman. That's fantastic. I'm excited. So I got my hands in all sorts of places. Fantasy football, comedy, writing, the marijuana business. Yes. Because the wife and I, the more we can learn, the better. We keep growing our own. We will open up our own. How would you like that? Madhouse MK Marijuana. Madhouse MK MJ. It's a good idea, right? So, things have been pretty good. Another thing I did during spring break and still this week, as a matter of fact, as soon as I get done potting, I'm going to go. If there's been any ringing you can hear, I feel like I've been hearing a ring. I think it might be the mostly empty can of Rockstar. Might be adding a little hello. Anyway. As I was saying, played a lot of this game, Hunt Showdown. I've mentioned it before. It's one of those first-person shooters, but it's really cool. You get into a match, there's bounties, right? You got to collect the bounties. That's the main object. And these bounties are monsters. One's a giant spider with, human features all over it. The other one's like a butcher who's got a pig's head instead of a human head, but he's a butcher. He's got this fiery claw thing. Then there's the assassin. It's like this creature with blades on each arm. And then he disintegrates into bugs to travel across the floor, the wall, the ceiling. And then he reappears in assassin form and whoosh. But then there's this event going on as the crow flies. And it's to introduce the new crow boss. Scrapbeak is the name. And he's very cool. He's like a mechanical human crow type hybrid kind of monster. And so there's a lot of cool stuff going on with this event. Points to gather to unlock things. And so I'm excited for the game. And while you got these bounties going on, there's all these different zombies. There's a bunch of regular zombies, right? running around. And then you got different ones like the Hive, which shoots a swarm of poisonous bugs at you. You get the Immolator, which is a fire zombie. You got the Hellhounds, which are basically zombie dogs. And then on top of that, you got other hunters, such as yourself, in the game. So you're competing against other players, a horde of zombies, and then to try and get to these bounties. And there's a special event going on, so there's lots of stuff to do, and it's just a good time. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. I also enjoy the hell out of comic books. And the Suicide Squad 2 trailer is here. And it looks fantastic. Not the teaser. The teaser was out. That was definitely a tease. This is great. I was talking about it with, again, Mr. Aaron Stewart, the March Heron. And I was talking to him. And he's going to check out the trailer because he was excited. And because we love that kind of stuff. And again, more from me and Aaron chatting together this week. Some Game of Thrones stuff. That's later on in the pod. But there's a lot of good stuff. Idris Elba playing as Bloodsport. I mean, that's fantastic. And he's great in the preview. You got Harley Quinn coming back. Captain Boomerang. Rick Flag. A bunch of new dudes, including Peacemaker, played by John Cena. And he's great. There's a part between him and Idris Elba, a.k.a. Bloodsport. And John Cena says, you're the leader. You're supposed to lead. You're supposed to make decisions. And Bloodsport says, I've decided you should eat a big bag of dicks. That's why I love these HBO straight to these movies that are going straight to HBO Max because they have the curse word and I know you can find those, but I love the movie trailers with the curse words and everything in it. It's like, yeah, don't censor that shit if it's a rated R movie. Let me see what I'm gonna see. Hear what I'm gonna hear. But he says, I've decided you can eat a big bag of dicks. And John Cena is like, if this whole bag of dicks, or if this whole island was full of dicks, and I had to eat every one in the name of liberty, I'd say no problemo. And, I brought up my buddy Aaron because as wrestling fans, we had that convo last week. Not a big John Cena fan myself. And neither with Aaron. And it's just funny because that's one thing I've always gave Cena props on is he could be pretty funny. And even though I didn't like him as a wrestler, as an entertainer, all that. And so he's starting to grow on me as an actor. And then the Suicide Squad 2 just might do it for me. It just might. But in other sporting news, hey, you got the Final Four. That's right. Gonna have Baylor versus Houston, 1 versus 2 seed. And then, on the other side of the bracket, you got Gonzaga versus number 11 UCLA. We've got it upset. A double-digit seed in the tournament. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I always like when that happens. I really do. It's good stuff. And let's see. For the women's, of course, because they're having a hell of a tournament too. And I haven't watched much of it, I'll be honest, and I'll explain why in a second. But you got Stanford going up against South Carolina and Arizona going up against UConn on the other side of the bracket. So you get a couple of awesome Final Fours coming up, and I'm excited. I actually watched the UCLA.
You suck. Yeah,
I know, but it was only just the second time. Anyway, I was watching the UCLA Michigan game. It was a lot of fun. It was very close, down to the wire. UCLA pulls it off. Cool stuff to see. But I just can't get as in to women's college basketball. Women's basketball in general. And this is not anything against the women, because I love plenty of women's sports. I fucking love women's soccer. It's great. Women's tennis. They are bad asses. It's not just women's basketball. Like, I don't like college football, period. I just don't like, I kind of watch a little bit when it gets to the college football playoffs, but I don't really care that much about college football. In the same vein, I don't really care about women's basketball in general. I tried to, as someone who rooted for many years for the Minnesota sports teams. Okay, now we're really getting off track. I'll try and get it together by the end of the intro for next segment. But as a Minnesota sports fan for years, I wanted a winning team there. The Minnesota Lynx, the WNBA team there, won many championships. The only other Minnesota sports team to do it was the Minnesota Twins many years ago. So I tried very hard to get into the WNBA because I wanted to root for a winning team in the Minnesota Lynx, and I just couldn't do it. I just have certain sports that don't hit me. I've tried a million times to fucking get into golf. I can't do it. I just can't. And I brought up football a few times. I do love football. The NFL, that is. Again, not really into college football. But NFL is interesting things going on. You got trades happening all over the place for picks. There's going to be a QB craze at the top of the draft. It's going to be very interesting. But most interesting, they're going to have a 17-game season, which means they're adding a game on, which some players are pretty upset with. And I can understand why, especially if you're not going to give teams an extra bye week or anything like that. It is kind of screwy. But if we get half the preseason games, and that's tough for the teams too, because they kind of need the preseason games to, check out rookies and make decisions on their roster cuts and stuff. They got to know who they're going to keep and whatnot. And you're having their time to do that, cutting it in half. So I don't know. We'll see. It's like, for me, sure, I'll take one more game, but I feel bad for the players, and it just, yeah. And in the world of pro-graps, the previously mentioned pro-graps, because Aaron and I did have a fun conversation about that last week, but Will Ospreay, the asshole that he is, or as my wife likes to call him, Will Offspray. I know. But he won the New Japan Cup over Shingo Takagi. It was a great tournament. I actually like how this plays out. On April the 4th, this Sunday, Easter Sunday, as a matter of fact, you've got, for New Japan, the Sakura Genesis show. And this is going to be fun, because it's going to have your New Japan Cup winner Will Ospreay versus the champ Kota Ibushi, along with the introduction of the brand new title. So, it's going to be good stuff in wrestling going on. Not so great stuff going on, in the U.S. and across the world. So, let's get into a little bit of a discussion on that, shall we? Okay. Get a little serious for a second. For a few minutes, We got news. Same old crazy shit in the United States. COVID cases are still rising. It's concerning. The docs are concerned, because we're giving out vaccinations left and right. Cases still rising, People continuing to be stupid about this and not smart and acting like COVID's over, it doesn't matter, or whatever. So that's a bitch, and wouldn't be surprised to see another spike, and, shit, who knows? What a pain in the ass. Then, in Georgia, Governor Kemp, they've got new voter laws there, more like suppression laws. And these include like closing the polls earlier, and fines for giving food or drink to voters standing in line. And Governor Kemp and a bunch of old ass white politicians signed these new laws under a painting of a slave plantation, as to further say, hey, suppressing minorities, specifically black people, is part of how we got here. And you know what? We're going to make sure we're still, able to do that. Going to make it tough as shit on black communities to vote. It's just bullshit. It's bullshit. Don't know how it's even allowed to happen. But things are worse other places. In Myanmar, you have the coup going on. And over the weekend, over 100 protesters dead, including children. The military in Myanmar seems to care very little of their people. And if you don't know what happened there, this all happened because, see, it's a bit different than it is here. The military in a place like Myanmar is almost its own entity. Now, there's been democratic leadership in Myanmar for a while. But most recently, there was a democratic leader elected in a landslide victory. And the military claimed fraudulent election, arrested the winner, took over, and now you see what's happening with the protests and protesters getting shot, killed. And it's not all that far away from what could have happened here, right? I mean, that's basically what Trump tried to accomplish. Claiming election fraud, trying to find a way to use the military to stay in power. Very similar situations. We have a little more safeguard here, but the fact that it even got that close should be a warning that lots needs to change in Washington. But speaking of Trump, he's yapping again. And now he's got this 45office.com website. And it's just a repetition of his life. Well, it talks about how great he is and what a great job he did as a leader. And now we had the best economy and all this, like a bunch of shit that's just lies. Shit that his people eat up because they don't bother to look into whether it's true or not. Left out the impeachment stuff. And when it comes to COVID, his fast response is what it says. His quick response. Despite the fact that he acted like it was no big deal in the beginning. And he even had this rant recently where he admitted, where he's talking shit about the doctors, Brax, Fauci, and how he didn't even really listen to him. Like admitting, like, yeah, I didn't listen to the fucking doctors when it came to the corona. Like, yeah, a lot of fucking people died. And he's trying to take credit for, like, the vaccines. Like, he got it rolling, but, like, he could have done so much better had he not been preoccupied. And he's nowhere near on the level what Biden's done. So it just... It's crazy. Through all this, the amount of fucking supporters he still has. It's insane. I don't understand it. What the fuck is going on? I really don't. But hey, at least the asteroid Apophis, named after the god of chaos, at least it won't wreck us for another 100 years, you know. Speaking of chaos, some Game of Thrones chatter. I know. It was a bit of a short section for the news, but this is what I had to go. I didn't want to spend too much time on the serious because there's not a lot going on. And like I said, some of it is just extremely depressing, at least in my opinion. Myanmar, the Georgia voting law, that like some of this shit is depressing, man. But we continue on and we make room for the chat of Game of Thrones. Because as Aaron and I will get into, it's a great show. Ended with some disappointment, some controversy. And it's just one of those, during all of 2020, we had lockdown, quarantine, and not something that came up a lot as something people were streaming or wanted to restream or were suggesting to others to restream. And so we just kind of run down through our love of Game of Thrones. Where were we disappointed? Why? Our favorite stuff from Thrones, etc., etc. It's a good combo. Hope you all enjoy it. And we'll be back after that combo to close the pot out. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Thought that was something really scary, but it was just paper. Just paper. We'll be back. All right, Madcaps. As promised, some Game of Thrones discussion and bringing in to the Mad Tea Party, my buddy, once again, Mr. Aaron Stewart, the man that keeps on gifting. Welcome back to Miscellaneous Debris, Aaron. Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. And another Game of Thrones fan, and this is cool because I've talked Thrones with a lot of people, and we talked a tad, leading up to doing this, but we really don't know a lot of each other's, history with the Game of Thrones. So this should actually be a pretty fun conversation. But it's one of those things where such an iconic show, and I loved it so much. And I got into the books and this and that. And, then there's controversial ending to the show, I guess is the way you would put it. And I don't know, for me, I love the medieval stuff, and it's just one of those, you kind of know with the show, does it grab you at that first episode? I remember the show, The Shield. I loved the show, The Shield. And it was one of those, that first episode just grabbed me. And that's what Game of Thrones did. It just grabs you. Oh my God, brother, sister kissing. They killed the kid. That's what you think. They killed the kid because they saw him kissing. Holy shit. And that's the first episode. And you're like, what the fuck? And that shit gets me, man. And, so on top of, the medieval stuff and everything, man, I just loved everything about it. And, of course, disappointment along the way, we can get into that. Whether it's the final season, the final couple of seasons, the ties to the books, things of that nature. But, despite all of that, I'm always going to love me some Game of Thrones. And one of these days I'm going to get back to it and watch it again, as my brother is now doing. But I did wonder why more people weren't talking about it during lockdown, like streaming Game of Thrones, because, is it some of that disappointment from the final season? It just feels like it's one of those that should have been tossed around more. But overall, gotta love the Thrones. Aaron, tell me, you got into it. Did you read the books? Have you read anything? What's some of your history with the Game of Thrones?
So my history of Game of Thrones, I got into Game of Thrones really, 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 really late. Like it would be, I would hang out with friends and they'd watch it and I'd kind of be there and kind of like, so I'd catch like some of these episodes at just random times, right? But sometimes I don't even have the attention span for shows. And usually when I'm watching stuff, it was like I prefer watching sports games and everything. So then it was less than a year before the final season. So there was good and bad on that. The good was I got to watch everything, all 7 seasons up to that final season. So like it was very fresh on my mind. Like there were things I may reference very early in the show that I was like, oh yeah, like I remember that because I watched that maybe a month ago. Uh,
Right.
I'm not happy about just about how much Game of Thrones I may have watched on a daily basis, but it was a show that, as you mentioned, it has you hooked just on the first
Yes.
episode because you're like, whoa, they did what? And what?
Mhm.
And that was something I grew to appreciate about early Game of Thrones was just the twist and turns, the shock value. Because one show that I am a diehard fan of is actually it's an anime, but early anyone that enjoys a good story, they would enjoy this. And it's One Piece. One Piece has been going around for well over 2 decades now. In
Mhm.
if you read manga, they just released manga episode 1008. 1008. It's a
Yeah.
massive freaking world they've built. I
Right.
honestly think that there are people that enjoy certain aspects about Game of Thrones would also enjoy One Piece. But that's a different conversation. With Game of Thrones, what I didn't read the books.
Mm.
And when I started watching this and I would catch these episodes, like what's funny is even though I had seen certain scenes, I wasn't prepared for it. And
Right.
I'll say the episode that really got me was the Reigns of Castamere.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh, the Red Wedding.
the Red Wedding, which I had always heard, Red Wedding, and hadn't connected the dang dots at all. I don't know. Like that's how like I knew like that is the signs of a good show is
Yeah.
when the author or the producers they can have you go one way and all of a sudden put you in another direction. You're like, I didn't even see that coming.
Right.
And that's how I got hooked on it. I was like, give me more. Like it became a junkie at that
Right.
point.
And that's how it became to me because that like I've always been into books and as you know, I don't just write sports stuff. I try and write my own novels and I love the idea of no character is safe. I fucking love it. And that is one of the draws to that show because for me, I guess a tad bit of back when I first started watching it. A buddy I'd worked with, and this was in little shithole Fort Dodge, Iowa, when I first sobered up. He was like, "Oh yeah, you got to check out Game of Thrones. The second season's going on right now." I'm like, "Okay, okay," and he kind of explains it to me, and I'm like, "That sounds like some shit I would really enjoy." So he lets me borrow the first season DVD. I chewed through that in a couple of days. It didn't take long. I was obsessed with it. And then I'm sitting there dying, waiting for season 2 to come out on DVD so I can buy it because I don't fucking have HBO. I just sobered up. I'm working at a fucking Carl's Jr. and I don't make a whole lot of money. I don't have HBO. So I go out, I buy season 2. And at this point, I meet a girl, what is to be my wife now. And I say, it's like our first week together. And I'm just like, this fucking Game of Thrones. You got to watch this shit. It's so great. So I watched the first season with her, watched the second season with her. So we're all ready for the third season. Now, by this point, I had also gotten into the books. I'm a big reader. I love this kind of stuff. I got like bought the first like 4 or 5 books, whichever ones were out at that point. And I just start chewing through those. And I just love everything about this. And so I know the Red Wedding is coming because I've read it and it made me sad. Because at that point, my hopes from Rob Stark. And I was so sad, like because all the people like that I really like I remember season 2 when Renly died. I was so bummed because I was like, oh, fucking Renly and Robb Stark are gonna team up and they're gonna kick some ass. And then Renly got killed by the shadow thing, and I was like, no, no. And it just happens over and over. And I mean, fuck, the very first season, you're like, oh, Lord Stark, you are the greatest Lord Stark. Oh no, his head. Oh my God. It's the great, but that's what I love. No character is safe. But I knew all about the Red Wedding, having read about it. And so I got to see my wife react real time, having no fucking clue. And so that kind of shit was great. But then you get later on in into the seasons, and this is where like people who haven't read books, probably such as yourself, start to see the show is it's not quite as sharp.
Yeah.
It's also around the same time they really start leaving shit out from the books. So then they're having to tie shit together. I mean, this is my opinion of how it went. So then they're having to tie shit together while leaving some of the shit out, which I get. It's a show, it's not a book, God, but that's why it's a show, not a movie, so you can show more stuff. So I don't know. And then it gets to the point where everything feels a little rushed, and even then I'm like, that's okay. And then we'll get more into the disappointment later. But there's definitely like you see differences in the show where like the whole Dorne, all the Dorne aspect, and all the people from that, like there is so much more that they do in the story. And like the book series isn't even finished. We have no fucking clue if he'll finish it because he's like 800 years old and he's been busy writing other books instead of finishing Game of Thrones. I think they finished the show and he was just like, whatever. But maybe someday we'll get that book, but the last two books. But you do see a lot of like cool stuff. Euron Greyjoy. There is actually in the book also Victarion. And basically what the show did was they took Victarion and Euron and just made them one. Yeah. And it's a fucking shame because the way it goes in the books is fucking amazing because these two brothers are at each other's throats and it's fantastic. And so for book readers, like, yeah, some of this shit is definitely like you don't expect it to follow it the books to the T. It felt like they were leaving out some pretty important shit. And so yeah, despite all of that, I love the books. I hope they get finished, and I love the show. And we'll get more into disappointment, but as far as I think we pretty much agree the earlier seasons are the best. So what are some of your favorite characters in the show?
You hit on one of them already, and that was Robb Stark. So when I talked about the Reigns of Castamere, I was like, really like this Robb Stark guy. Like, he's one of the few decent guys. Oh no, oh man, like father, like son. That was just devastating. But like, what I do like about like he didn't. It wasn't a meaningless death. Like when you stop to think about it, and you thought of actions taken by characters, it's usually the characters that die. There's a choice that they've made that comes with consequences, which is a great reminder to people and here in the real world to be careful with what you say, what you do, because if you can't, we don't live in a movie. You can't rewind and redo something. So when I stopped to think about it, I was like, he had an arranged marriage that he backed out of. Of course he was going to die. Like, that's just how, I know it's a fictional world, but it's, as you mentioned, it's like a medieval times. Like that's what, it's what would happen.
Right. It's not even really all that fictional because it's based on a time that is very real, you know, like, so yes, totally fair points.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
And a couple of other characters. They're pretty popular characters amongst all fans. One, of course, is Tyrion
Yeah.
Lannister,
Gotta love
because
Tyrion.
I just feel like just the sense of humor and everything. I was like, yeah,
Yes.
that's me. That's me making smart ass remarks.
The
And
wit.
yeah, the witty humor. I didn't like what he became towards the end. It was like, is this what you are? This kind of this cowering advisor to the queen. It's like, this isn't what you were for the
Right.
longest time. And maybe that's because, as you mentioned, uh, when they ran out of book material, then you're going off the script there. And that's what it seemed to kind of be. It was like, this isn't really the character I fell in love with, that I enjoyed his adventure, his arcs. And then of course my other favorite character, I mean, who doesn't like Arya? Like, Arya kicks ass.
Oh yeah.
It was one of those characters too that, because she really was a child, like the actress was a child when it started, like you watch her grow up in this show.
You sure do. Yeah. Her
Yeah.
and Sansa.
Yes.
It's crazy, really. It is pretty crazy.
And maybe because Arya's like, she was so small. Like, I think the actresses are they're actually the same age. But the actress who plays Sansa, she was gorgeous from day one. Although it took me a long time to like Sansa. And I also am aware, like, she wasn't supposed to really be likable at the beginning.
Right.
She got a spoiled princess, and Arya was like,
spoiled princess. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's definitely like the bratty sister you didn't like.
But she
and
learned
Arya
how to
was
survive.
The cool one.
Yeah, and Arya was always
did.
cool. And
She went through a lot of shit.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about Sansa, is that, like, she learned how to play the Game of Thrones. And like, when I was able to finish Game of Thrones and then reflect on like her journey through all this, I was like, I appreciate the character now. Like, she was dragged through the shit and came out as like as a badass towards the end. And to see her and Arya, like, to see their relationship from the very beginning, typical like siblings where they're annoying the hell out of each other, and towards the end they pull one on Littlefinger. That was
great.
Such a satisfying scene. Oh, yes. So satisfying. But yeah, that's my trio of favorite characters. It started with Robb Stark, then definitely became Arya. Tyrion, basically day one. It was like, yep, I'm gonna like this guy.
Yeah. I with Sansa, it's funny because she grew on me as well. And by the final season, me and my family and a bunch of friends, we all did this like Game of Thrones like challenge board type thing that I had seen somewhere online. And basically you went through and you predicted who would die, which episode of the final season they would die, and then who you thought would be king and queen. And then I added categories like bonus point categories, like will they, like, if this person dies, who are they killed by? Like dragon, zombie, another character. So it was a fun little thing. And I had Sansa sit in the Iron Throne. That's where I was at before the final season of Game of Thrones, because again, with the books aren't incomplete, and you have no idea, because they've left out shit from other books that, like I said, they started out great and then they start leaving shit out, and then there's no more book material, so they're going on their own, and you're like, I have no idea how close it's going to be to the books or anything like that, and you're nervous because, like we'll get to, but we both mentioned shit seems rushed. So but yes, I had Sansa sit in the Iron Throne, but I can't agree with you more on, I'd love to meet some Robb Stark. I love to meet some Lord Stark. Arya, gotta love her too. And Tyrion, of course. His quote that never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. That's some shit that I took to heart because that very much makes sense to me in my brain, and definitely something I can use. So that I loved Tyrion overall as a character, and just for little things like that. But I also am someone who likes random characters as their favorites, and really my entire out of the entire series, I don't think anyone entertained me more than Braun. He is by far my favorite character of the show because no matter where he was at, he was entertaining, he was doing his thing, and I just he was so enjoyable, and so he's definitely right up on the list. And I don't know. I mean, there was such a good character. I'm such a fan of villains. Like I part of the reason I love Batman so much is just the awesome array of villains that they have, you know.
Yes.
And so I and Star Wars, such great villains. I appreciate great villains. Game of Thrones no different.
Yeah.
You know, from Tywin Lannister, old fucking mean bastard, to Joffrey, who is just the fucking worst, to the insanity that is Ramsay. You know, like they just had the best villains, man. And so I really do enjoy the villains. And another one that I really enjoyed, the Red Viper. And I swear, man, again, I read the book before the show, and as I'm reading it, I'm so excited because I'm like, he's gonna take out the mountain. This is great. This is great. I'm getting all excited reading, and then I'm like, oh no.
Yes.
Oh no. You know, because that part exactly like the book, and you're just like, why'd you shut up? Why'd you have to do like and
that scene
one
is just burned into my memory.
Well, it's not just losing the Red Viper, it's Tyrion's fucked. And like, there's so much shit that comes from that. You're just like, no.
Well, and it was just impressive that, like, because at that point, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm trying to think of what season that was, but we had seen enough Game of Thrones to like know that shit like this happens, right? But we had never.
Right.
Like the way he killed the Viper, it was like, even on Game of Thrones standards, it was like, holy crap. Oh
right.
no, as you mentioned, oh no. Like,
yeah, you went from thinking, oh fuck yeah, the Red Viper did it, to oh, his eyes are out of his head.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Then it's just such a bummer. But yeah, Braun is.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, and actually, speaking of Braun, one quick fun fact, and you may know this too, like the actor that plays Braun and the actress that plays Cersei Lannister.
Yeah.
Like, you know where I'm going with this, but for people that are listening, like, so the two actors have been romantically involved, and it did not end well. And part of that, as Braun becomes this character in the show, because in the books, if I'm not mistaken, he's really not. He just happens to be like so dang good at being this character in the show that he becomes one of the supporting characters. But this romantic relationship ended so poorly that the two actors that played Braun and Cersei Lannister refused to do any scenes together.
Right.
Which, when you get to the end of the show and everyone is in one place, it was like, God, son of a really.
Yeah, that had to have been a pain. But speaking of Cersei, another great villain. I thought she was great. And then I've left out someone that I truly is got to be at the top of the character list as well, at least for me, and that's Jaime.
Absolutely.
It's seeing just, man, some of the like this show provided. I mean, yeah, you can look at the transformation of Arya growing up, but two people, Jaime and Theon, Now, Theon, not so much one of my favorites, but he had one of the better, transformations, character arcs throughout the
Yeah.
story. But Jamie's I just fucking loved. And seeing everything from rooting for him to getting his hand chopped off to feeling pity for him and wanting him to rebound and redeem himself. And you find out later on in the story the details of his encounter with the Mad King and all the things that go into Jamie.
Yeah.
And it's just such phenomenal storytelling.
Absolutely. And you're correct. Like, I feel bad that I'd even, like, that's just tells you how many good characters that
I know.
there was in the show.
I didn't have him written down. He popped in my head. I was like,
I'm glad.
You said Cersei? And I'm like, what a great villain she was. Jamie.
Hey, Jamie. And you're correct, because like I guess it goes kind of like what we talked about last time we did this podcast when we were talking about professional wrestling. And it's like, we don't, like, the reason that we stopped really enjoying WWE is that there's no characters. And like, when there are characters, everything is just kind of thrown together, and there's no continuity. But like, when you have characters in professional wrestling that have kind of a slow burn, and like sometimes they've gone from being a heel, a bad guy, to being a good guy, a face, and you don't even realize, like, there wasn't like this, like, I'm a good guy. It's like, wait a minute, like, I didn't even realize that I was rooting for this guy now. And that was what Jamie Lannister was, because you wanted him to get his ass kicked. And when he first got his hand chopped off, you're like, oh, okay. Like, but he played it so well of like getting you, like, playing with your feelings, and you're sympathetic for him. And then you're like, son of a gun, he got me. And then you start to, as you mentioned, you understand more of why the way he is, and some of that's just this perception. And he basically at some point in his journey just goes, look, they already think I'm the bad guy, I'm gonna be the bad guy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, and I can fucking totally relate to that, because you do. I've experienced some of that in my life, where it's like it's to a point where it's like, okay, all right, fine, fuck it. And so I could kind of relate, especially when you find out all the details, and like him him slaying the king was what needed to happen, and the way he was basically black sheeped for it, scapegoated. That would be the better phrase.
Well, it's like the Batman quote, right? Like, you're the hero. You're the hero we need, but not the one we deserve. And that was
right.
Jamie Lannister, Batman of Game of Thrones.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's get into some favorite episodes before we wrap this up, and we'll finish it off with whatever disappointment we have in Thrones, and we'll each take a turn with that, because it's emotional. But first, stick with more of the good, because the Game of Thrones overall offers a ton of good, great, and amazing. And some of the favorite episodes for me is, again, the first episode reels you in, but then some of the episodes that really keep you going, I can think of the Battle of Blackwater. I think it's just called Blackwater, and I believe that was in season 2. That episode I loved. That's where Tyrion gets fucked up, but that's also where he leads the fucking army and he just kicks that. I loved all of that. Davos, another fucking great character. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Dany or Jon Snow yet, but anyway, Battle of Blackwater, great episode. Speaking of battles, Battle of the Bastards, the Battle of Winterfell from the 7th season. Some people had an issue with that episode. I fucking loved it. I'll have one issue with that episode. I take that back.
I think I know what you're going to say on that. So I agree, but like overall, yeah.
Overall, I loved it. Except for, God damn it, I'm drawing a blank. What the hell is the name of Dany's people? Why can't I think of it?
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank too. Sorry, it's been what now? We're coming up. I haven't watched Game of Thrones since it ended.
Khal Drogo's people.
Yeah.
Khal Drogo's people. What would
Khal
that?
Drogo. She's the queen of those people. The Khaleesi. No, that's her title.
Dothraki.
No, that's
Dothraki.
Dothraki. There we go.
Yes. How the fuck did I have all
It's
this
'cause these
Game
names-
of Thrones information written down in my head, and I forgot Dothraki. You're right that there's just so much. Oh, it's
And these
crazy.
names are not easy to say. So,
Well, especially some of that shit. But the Dothraki, yes. So sending those fuckers out, like that part, I'm like, and there was someone, we were talking about it on Reddit, and they were like, that's just, if you know anything about like combat, like they would never do that. Like,
and they could have played it off. Like they could have absolutely, like, I agree. It's like something that makes absolutely no freaking sense. And what they could have done instead is they were already building the tension, right, between Daenerys and Sansa, right? And it goes, okay, so we're at Winterfell, we're already on Stark territory, and you tell me that you're sending my people as like sacrificial pawns in this game. Like you're already crippling Daenerys. Like they could have built more on that tension they could have gotten themselves out of that severe plot hole.
Yeah.
Like it created a great image for us viewers of the lights. Like
that's slowly. What my brother said. He was like, well, it kind of looked cool. That was probably the point. And I'm like, yeah. But I love the shit out of that episode. That one part bothered me, but I otherwise really liked it. And then again, Battle of the Bastards, gotta love that episode. But for me, I don't know that I love anything more than Hard Home. And that's the episode where Jon goes with another great character. What the hell is his name? The red-haired dude.
The guy that looks like me. That's a
right.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. But the
Tormund.
guy that
I didn't even know. I remembered before I Tormund Giantsbane. So Tormund it's taking Jon Snow, and they're trying to go convince all the other wildling groups that they need to go with them back and then go stay with them at the wall. And it's that whole meeting and everything going on there. And then at the end, the snow starts to come, the darkness starts to come. You see the fuckers on the horses up on the top of the cliff, and then just madness and chaos ensues. And it is just I might have to go watch that episode after we get done.
freaking love it.
But that is probably my number one episode is Hard Home. That one right there, probably.
And I'd say for me, like some of the episodes and scenes I'd mentioned earlier, of course, Reigns of Castamere, because it's iconic. And it was that nice reminder. If I remember correctly, for a lot of fans' favorite characters, things have been going well for maybe too long. And it was that nice, like, pull back into, no, this is the reality of this world where your favorites are going to die. And of course, the episode, the Mountain versus the Viper, because it was like, oh shit, like, what does this mean for one of our favorite characters, Tyrion? But really, the number one thing I have is like basically anytime I'm such a guy on this one. Anytime there was a battle or a war, like they nailed those episodes. Like whether it was Winterfell, Battle of the Bastards. Any battles, just the people that got to do the effects got to do their thing. Like it was always going to be awesome. There's one battle we didn't even get to talk about, and that was the battle at the wall. And I just remember them.
Fuck yeah!
And I just remember when they, what's the blade? They had the gigantic freaking blade.
Yes.
They released on the wall. You got the wildlings
there was
climbing
so
up.
much
The
cool
pendulum.
shit in that episode.
The pendulum the pendulum blade that they release, and it
Yes.
just a massive freaking blade. But like, it's not just the violence, gore, like, but what I liked about these war scenes is that that's what usually built characters. Like when whoever survived and came out of that, it was like what would happen in real wars and battles. You come out and you're like, you're not the same. As wrestling fans, we always like, they come out of the Hell in a Cell, that changed me. Like that actually happened in all these battles, all these wars. It would have the type of effects on people. Like Battle of the Bastards is when like Sansa is like, she is just like dead on the inside at that point. She is just so numb to it, to the point where she's like, yeah, I'm gonna feed Ramsay to the dogs.
Yeah, I love when they're like meeting each other, like, and they're all on horses, and like Ramsay's just talking
Yeah.
shit to Jon Snow, and I can't remember exactly what Sansa says to Ramsay, but she just says something along the lines of, I think, like, I'll enjoy watching you die tomorrow, Lord Ramsay, or something like that. And then she just turns her horse and trots away, and like that. And I was just like, fuck yeah, Sansa.
Because like, even though she didn't like fight in that war, it's like the character of Sansa like died in that war and got replaced with just this. Because I remember and like when I was watching the final season, I was like, man, I'm really like, Sansa's really kind of getting on my nerves when I was first watching it. But then when you're able to kind of go back and you stop and you reflect on like everything, and you go back and rewatch some things, you're like, no, she's this cold heartless bitch, because like that's what the world has done to her. But she also had to, like, if you're going to rule, like the Sansa that was there at the beginning, where like she was living a fairy tale, which is, most fairy tales kind of have this type of like world, the medieval world, and she's gonna be one of those princesses, and it's like, this ain't no Disney.
Right.
The Mandalorian actor may be in this, but ain't no Disney,
Right.
When he died, Disney died, and so it was what needed to happen. Like the Battle of the Bastards, like Ramsay died, but also like that was Sansa was reborn as Phoenix. Hey, a nice little connection to X-Men for.
Yeah. There you go.
Although we may want to forget about that movie, but just
I haven't seen it yet. Everybody said don't waste your time, and I'm like, it's X-Men, and I don't hate movies as much as most people, so I'd probably not hate it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we can sometimes be like overly critical, like and that's why I enjoy talking about Game of Thrones, because it's even got me to kind of like, when I'm reflecting on so much of the good stuff, and it helps kind of know, like, was it perfect? No, but like it's like, maybe it got too much shit, that's for sure. But just kind of wrap it all up, like favorite episodes, anything with a battle, because A, battle scenes are awesome. B, like characters involved, that was their character development. They come out of this and they're different. And even Tyrion, like back on we just mentioned it earlier. Something Bay,
Blackwater. Yeah,
Golly.
Blackwater. That's okay. I don't know how I couldn't think of Dothraki. It's beyond me how that escaped me.
And to break the fourth wall here, like the reason our memories are probably like just kind of shot right now is coming up. It's almost 4:00 my time.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. We're almost done because my pad's almost dead. So,
so sorry we broke the fourth wall, but that's what happens. We go on a roll on all these.
That's
podcasts.
all right. Most of the madcaps know, because I usually tell them anyway, because I'm usually recording late. When I was doing it by myself, anytime I'm recording, it's usually this time, maybe not quite this late, but it is pretty late. Oh no, you're good, bro. You are good.
But I think like I covered all my favorite episodes, and man, you stop to think.
No, I'm with you. Fun. Yeah, the battle stuff. Anytime there's an important like death, any of that stuff is the wall. The episode with Hodor, another great, where you find out that Hodor hold the door. Like that is some shit. That was fucking mind blowing. Like And that's the stuff you remember because there is going to be disappointment, and unfortunately for a lot of people they're going to probably hold it against it too much. Me, again, I'm still waiting to see how the end of the books come out, if that ever happens, because I'd like to know how close. I mean, because you figure the author George R. R. Martin had to give him an idea, and I believe I remember reading on it that he basically told him how it would end. It's just they didn't have the details after a certain point because there was no more books. And and between not having any more book material to go by and therefore having to create a lot of it on their own,
Mhm.
and then having to connect again certain things. Well, there's some things, how do you connect when you've left certain parts out of the show already? And so then it gets a little messy, and then you add in the fact that they kind of rush things because, well, the creators, Benioff and Weiss of Game of Thrones, they were supposed to go do the new Star Wars series,
Mhm.
so they were getting too excited about that, and we're preparing for that. So it just felt like it just it felt like they were just trying to wrap it up,
Right.
and they were. I do think it was difficult all around, um, just because of the position they were in without the book material and everything. But I still feel like it could have done better, particularly the very last episode. I have no doubt that in the books, Bran will end up being in the same position that he is in the show. I just feel like the season 6 and 7, that books 6 and 7 will fill everything in so much more beautifully.
Yeah.
And that's really the only disappointment for me, is that I feel like it could have done better. And maybe the writers of the show just maybe it's true. Maybe they were just ready to move on. And maybe some people are being overcritical. I still enjoyed 6 and 7 for the most part. Like I said, my major disappointment, and we really are running out of time, but my major disappointment is the very final episode, because I was willing to ignore some of the shit that went on during season 7, but it felt anticlimactic. It felt like it was like, oh, here's the end of what happened after Danny went crazy, and then here's this council thing, and that's the end of the show. Oh yeah, you get to see John going back north to defend what? Because I thought they were all dead.
Right.
So it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
for me, that's pretty much where I'm at. And yeah, you go with your thoughts.
And because I know that we've got limited time here, really,
Right. Sorry, I was trying to wrap it up.
no, that's okay. The what you mentioned for the disappointment is the same disappointment that I had, and I think when I reflect, it really was more of kind of bitterness towards the show creators. Is like, guys, you got a really nice thing here. Be really nice to finish out this commitment that as fans had.
Right.
Well, okay, maybe not me. I got in it really late, but like a lot of people had invested. Oh man, like what about close to a decade. So
Right.
it was kind of a slap in the face. It was like at least have the decency to keep doing a damn good job and to see this thing through. And like
Right.
that's where the disappointment, because all the other problems really kind of come from that. It was like, oh great, like why does season 8 have to be the final season? Like it seems like there's enough stories that have to be told to get a couple more seasons. So yeah, it really came down to the show producers, and that was just really crappy on them. And I don't even think they ended up doing the Star Wars thing. Like it was like, wow,
No, they didn't.
poetic
They did
justice.
not.
Maybe because like the people they were going to be working for is like, yeah, we saw what you just did here with Game of Thrones, and we're kind of afraid of you doing the same thing here. So poetic
Right.
justice, you hit on all the things. Like that's where the disappointment comes from. Felt like WWE rush everything, and
Yeah. And it's too bad because there's so many people that are going to hold on to that, and that's unfortunate because, as we talked about through this entire segment, there is so much awesomeness
Yep.
to that show. And yes, the last couple of seasons were rushed. There's a lot to forgive. There's still some you should definitely feel disappointed about. Everybody should, because we deserved more from those producers, I feel like. But when it comes down to it, overall, you can't let that disappointment ruin the overall, you know, product, because for me, you, many other people, it was a big fucking part of our lives.
Yep.
And no matter how quickly you watched it or how long you were around for book readers, I mean, the very first Game of Thrones book came out fucking years ago. Like, I believe like 2 decades plus. And so those guys are sitting here still waiting for the last book. And I'm sure many of them have watched the show, but it's just, yeah, it's iconic. Yes, there's disappointment to it, but overall, I love it to death because it's one of the best.
Well said, my friend. Can't
All
say it
right,
any
yes,
better.
sir. Well, hey, man, thank you for joining the Miscellaneous Debris Pod once again. Very much appreciated. Glad having you on. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's sometimes as much as we love fantasy football, it's nice to be able to talk about the other things we enjoyed too.
That's very true. That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. All right. Well, thank you for joining. And Mad Caps, we'll be right back to wrap this fucking tea party up. Cha-ching. Okay. One more thank you to Mr. Aaron Stewart for joining me on the Thrones conversation. And don't forget, you can check him out. I mean, he mostly does fantasy stuff, but he is entertaining and funny. So check him out. Aaron Stew 09 on the Twitters. I really do miss the Game of Thrones. Man, that was so much fun. It really was. Hopefully we get those last books. Like, George R. Martin, I'm begging you, just give us the last couple at once. Like, I'm hoping that's why you're taking I know it's wishful thinking and it's stupid, but I really hope that's why you've taken so long. Is because you're doing both. That's what I'm really hoping. Yeah. But anyway. Hopefully we get them. Just hopefully. But we will be getting soon another series of Thrones on HBO. House of the Dragon. About the Targaryens, I believe. And it's a prequel of sorts. And I will be excited for that, to check that out. And that'll be fun to get into once it arrives. Hope somehow it makes up for, some of the final season bullshit, particularly the final episode and this Jon Snow trial and bullshit and all that. And yeah, blah, blah, blah. Speaking of trials, one final thing that I failed to mention in the news. I shouldn't say failed to mention. I did have it in my notes for this particular part. So why am I saying it like that? Anyway, the Derek Chauvin trial, the man responsible for the death, George Floyd. His trial began. There were witnesses such as a 9-year-old, teenagers, a firefighter, all testifying. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out, because Minnesota it's got to be a little tense right now, waiting on this verdict, because hopefully the correct one comes down. There's going to be a lot of angry people if he ends up not getting put away for this. So hopefully, the correct decision is made. But we'll see how that goes. All right, folks. All right, I know we can end it on a down note. So I will say, I saw on Twitter, Peepsi was trending, and I was like, what the fuck is the Peepsi? Y'all heard of the Peepsi? Well, turns out that Pepsi, it's teamed up with Peeps to make a combination soda of Peeps and Pepsi. Holy shit. Now, I'm a fan of both. Individually, this combination sounds horrific, disgusting, not into it. No, just awful. The weather's not been awful. Again, as I mentioned, we're getting into spring. It's so exciting. Summer is almost here. And I'd be more excited if I felt 100% positive about the direction that everything is going. But with COVID cases rising and people still being stupid and who knows, and you know, gosh, the variants, all this strength. We'll see. We're moving on to spring. Enjoy it safely. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, in a couple of months, the country's in a better spot. We can hope. We can hope. Moving on to the spring. All right, folks. Madcaps. Let's get the hell on out of here. End this tea party, shall we? So remember, much love to you all. And enjoy your week. And stay safe, stay vigilant, stay mad, as always. And until we chat again, ta-ta for now. Laters! Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.